We'll take a deep dive into Prime Minister Modi's message to the global business community at the B20 summit with an expert panel of guests. India's Prime Minister Modi had some pointed messages for the global business community at the B20 summit in Delhi, which is the official G20 dialogue forum with businesses around the world. To talk about it, we have with us Deep Kapuria, Chairman, the high-tech group PAS, co-chair as well of B20 Digital Economy, and we're also joined in the studio by Shubhamay Bhattacharjee, Senior Economic Journalist. Good evening to you both. If I could ask you, Mr. Kapuria, first about the kind of messages that Prime Minister Modi had for the global business community at the B20 summit. It is completely backed by the kind of data we're getting on the macro indicators for the economy these days, aren't we?
That's absolutely true. And before I start, I need to tell you that I'm currently speaking from the Silicon Valley in San Francisco. And if we look at India and the way it was seen was kind of, but after the moon landing of Vikram, everyone is totally recognizing that India has finally there on the high table. So the message which went out by the Prime Minister was truly that of a global leader. The emphasis on inclusiveness, green credit, which was a very, very innovative approach to carbon, and the consumer focus by the industry was absolutely the highlight. I think this in itself gives a great message across the whole globe and even to the business community to focus on servicing the consumer, and not only the consumer, but in a very, very sustainable way, taking care of the whole supply chains, including the SMEs, which are so important and the backbone of the supply chains through the world.
Certainly. Shubhamay, in terms of the kind of data we're getting, even reports are saying that the GDP for the June quarter could be 8.3%, which is better than RBI's estimates. That's what some economists are saying now. So completely on point, the PM there, and the businesses around the world should really look at India. If they've not looked at India seriously till now, they should just be lining up to do business with us.
Yeah, and essentially that's what the Prime Minister was saying, and you can understand why. Because one major thing that the government has been able to do, and that's very significant, I think, is that India has produced a very consistent set of policies. Policies which sort of, go all over the place. They might look exciting, but they are not very useful. But as the Prime Minister made it clear, that the policies have been unidirectional, right from, for a very long time, and that is very significant. And that is what is giving us the benefit. Like, for instance, you refer to the benefit, the effect of the Chandrayaan. Now, it didn't happen in a day, but the investment in the science and technology by the government, consistently backing the ISRO scientists, despite the failure, despite the problems that comes along, the self-reliance, these are very useful indicators of success. And nothing succeeds like success, as they say. So what happens is essentially when a country starts doing the right things and showing the right things, much before that, the work that has been done, that doesn't get visible. But as you can see now, that the results are becoming very visible, and that is definitely what gives India the advantage to push for more engagement from the world business.
Deep Kapuria, if I could ask you, in terms of those businesses which may be looking to expand overseas, the kind of factors that they keep in mind, to what extent do you feel does India fit the bill for such a category of businesses, and by when will we realize that sort of an interest in India as well?
I think the interest in India continues to grow. That is absolutely the truth, for the simple reason that everyone is looking for a China plus one policy. In the initial bit, a lot of the other ASEAN countries and a lot of that went to Vietnam. But messaging now in terms of the consistency and the ease of doing business getting translated on the ground is getting visible. I'm right here. I've been here for the last 3 weeks talking to our various partners. We also have a manufacturing plant here in US and in Canada. And I see that consistently we are getting more and more queries and even of partnership of coming back and being a partner with us back in India. So that is the reality. I mean, I'm not talking about, just pure what is there on theory basis or what is seen in the media, but this is happening. Now, the pace of it, obviously, to my mind, will get another impetus by today's speech. Prime Minister has been very categorically clear that businesses are important and they are being welcomed. I think that message went across absolutely clearly.
Yes, the question of reliable and resilient supply chains fits very well with China plus one as well. But Shubhamoy, this has been talked about for a while now. Is that really happening? China plus one in India's favor? Because when you talk about China plus one, there are experts who say that India is not the only option. There are competitors in the field as well.
Certainly there are competitors, Gautam. I mean, that goes beyond saying there will be people. But what is working in India's favor, and that is what I was saying, is essentially the fact that India is consistently producing a set of macro results, which it had seemed impossible to do otherwise. Like if you look at the GDP, for instance, as you just mentioned, if you look at the fiscal policy, which has been very consistently conservative, if you look at the poverty reduction numbers, which has been consistently going up, the World Bank data shows about the largest cohort ever in the world having been pushed above the poverty line. Also, the fact is that it's not just the poorest. If you look at the per capita income, this is the period when a country's per capita income moves from $2,500 to something like $500. Now that's phenomenal change. That's a doubling. That sort of doubling doesn't happen on off in any country in millenniums. Mm-hmm. And that sort of a change is what the world industry is looking at. That anything, and which the Prime Minister today mentioned, that being oriented towards a neo middle class, he specifically referred to that word. He referred to the fact about making business very pro-poor. That means basically creating volumes and serving at price points which help them to move. These are very significant advantages and which are also extremely what I should call effective ways of ensuring the transfer of resources from the rich to the poor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Deep Kapuria, the Prime Minister also mentioned, not the fact that there is high inflation, not just in India, but around the world, everywhere, because of the kind of geopolitical situation that we face. But he mentioned rare earths as well, where the situation is a bit peculiar. And he said that this is something that should serve as a warning that nobody should try to monopolize and dictate terms as far as rare earths is concerned. The message was to the business community, but it seemed that it was for other years.
Yes, true. But prior to that, let me just add on to the point which is being just said on a macro way. Let me get down to, let's say, 5,000 feet from 50,000 feet to say that the businesses, what they were looking at in terms of not only the GDP growth, but how the supply chains are now getting more and more mature to cater to the global demand. For example, the auto component industry is today established that we will be able to supply the global set of the OEMs at a rate which is of literally of 100 ppm and some of them even to a level of 20 ppm. Now, getting down to this, I must also talk about my other hat that I wear as a QCI chair of NABCB. We have a zero defect program going on, which is nationally being promoted in a huge way.
Yes.
And today, that gives confidence that if you are going to be in India, you will not only have a workforce who are at least in the mindset ready for this zero effect and zero impact and zero quality in terms of delivery. So there is no quality issues when the customer gets its delivery. So these are some summations and delta of components which go on to attract the global industry to come in and establish their footprint here. On the point that you raised, I mean, you're rightly saying that there are people who are trying to monopolize the rare earths, and a kind of message needs to go. And today, our Prime Minister is globally placed as a leader to give out this message. And in this inclusive growth of getting the African Union as a larger set as the European Union, that is also a pointer towards this. I think if more and more industry engagement at that level
would really help. Yes, the PM also talked about cryptocurrencies and even consumer interest, but we're completely out of time, so we'll have to leave that to another occasion to talk about. Thank you so much for joining us, Deep Kapuria, as well as Shubhamoy Bhattacharjee.